Hey, welcome to camp. By now, you've probably met your fellow staff members, and you're getting ready for the work that lies ahead with campers. My name is Bob Ditter, and I've been visiting camps and working with counselors for over 20 years. And I want to share with you some things that I think will help you be smart in your work with children and help you keep camp a safe place for everyone here. Now, let's talk a little bit about being a camp counselor. First of all, some of you may be wondering, how hard could this possibly be? I mean, you get together with a bunch of kids, you have fun, what's the big deal, right? Well, those of you who have been at camp before or who have worked with children before know that even though it can be fun, being a camp counselor is hard work. As fun as it can be working with kids, whether you are a paid employee or a volunteer, being a youth worker is hard work. Sure, kids can be fun, but they can be challenging too. I believe that being a camp counselor is a craft. To do it well takes skill and practice, just like playing a sport or learning to play a musical instrument. And there are some things you should know about working with kids before you jump into it that will help you be more successful. Supervising your campers is the most important thing that you will do here at camp. To do that well, you need to know what to look for and what to do in certain situations. Let's start with some basics. To begin with, the energy cycle for kids is not the same as it is for us adults. When they are younger, children wake up earlier than we do and they get tired and hungry more easily. What's important about this is that when children become tired and hungry, they get irritable and they often have a harder time controlling themselves. They can lose their judgment and either get into arguments with one another or do things that are risky and unsafe. As a counselor, you can't lose your judgment. Remember, you are the adult. You are the person campers and their parents are counting on to keep things from getting out of control and to keep everyone feeling safe. That means that while it's fine to play with kids, you can never stop keeping an eye on the big picture. If you become too involved with a game or an activity, you may miss a situation between campers or between one counselor and a camper that could become emotionally or physically unsafe. In a way, it's like, how can you be in the water playing with kids and on the shore watching them at the same time? It's like you are the lifeguard of your kids. A key practice for counselors is to keep campers within eyesight at all times. This is especially true for younger campers who may need more care than older campers who are more self-reliant. The one exception to this is in situations where campers need some privacy. For example, when campers take showers or change clothes, they still need to be supervised. In fact, showers may be very stimulating for children, which means they can get silly or try to play pranks on one another. The rule of thumb in situations like these is to keep your campers within earshot. That means if you cannot hear what's going on, you're simply too far away from your kids. You can be just in the next room or on the porch of a cabin or just outside a tent, but you must be able to hear what's happening so that if a problem arises, you can intervene quickly before anyone gets hurt. Another basic truth about children is that they don't always know what's in their best interests. They may beg you to do something with them that's too risky or too scary or unsafe. Here again is where you need to be the adult. Being an effective camp counselor is not always about doing the popular thing. It is about doing what is in the best interest of the emotional and physical safety of your campers. If you go along with something, a prank, an escapade, some kind of an activity, and it ends up with somebody getting hurt, first of all, you're going to feel pretty bad about that. And second, saying that kids wanted to do it is no defense. As I said before, parents and campers are counting on you to make the tough judgment calls that may be unpopular, but that keep things safe. I want to talk to you about some other characteristics of children that you should know about to be effective as a youth worker. I mentioned before that children can become stimulated. In fact, they can become overstimulated. That means they can become so excited and feel things so intensely that they can't stop. You've probably seen kids at different ages in this state of emotion. Younger children can get too silly. Elementary school age kids can start out teasing or play fighting, and then suddenly it turns serious and somebody's crying. Older kids can get too curious, especially about the private romantic lives of youth workers. It is important to watch for this because once children become overstimulated, especially children in groups, they often have great difficulty maintaining self-control. It's at times like these that someone can get hurt. It's almost as if children can't stop. Their brakes don't work so well. In fact, one of the benefits of camp is helping campers master their feelings so they are not so ruled by them. It's like helping kids develop better brakes. As someone who's going to spend a lot of time around children, one of the things you need to be aware of is something called regressive pull. What that means, quite simply, is that if you spend enough time around children, you start to look and act just like they do. It's as if they exert a kind of pull on adults that cause us to be less patient, louder, more impulsive, and so on. As counselors, you need to be aware not only of how stimulated your campers are getting, but how worked up you may be getting. Adults who are out of control are not as helpful in maintaining that safe envelope at camp we are all counting on you for. We've been talking about what it means to be a good camp counselor, and we can't really do that justice without talking a little about discipline. Now, we could spend all day talking about discipline, and I just want to give you a few brief pointers. First of all, when you work with children, there's always a double standard. It's like you have two voices when you work with children. Your inside voice, which is the one that only you hear, and your public voice, the one that you edit. That's the one that you speak to publicly with children. Obviously, whenever you work with kids, you're not allowed to hit them or use abusive language or derogatory language with them, even if they do that with you. Remember, you're the adult. Now, one of the most important things to know about working with children, and especially with discipline, is learning how to redirect energy from activities where someone may get hurt or someone may get into trouble into activities that are safer, yet interesting. It's like finding something to keep children occupied and having fun in safe ways. If you have a child who is particularly challenging, don't feel like you have to have all the answers. The only way any of us learn how to become more effective with kids is to ask for help from people who have more experience than we do. It's how we all learn to be better with children. There are also some guidelines for contact with children that you need to know about in order to keep things safe. For example, do you know what the 3 safe places are to touch a child? First one is the upper back, the second one is the shoulder, third one is the upper arm. These are places where if you want to reassure kids or steady them or keep their attention, that it's safe to touch them. Remember, never touch a child against their will unless there's a clear danger or a medical necessity. And if there is, you need to have another adult present. Also, never touch a child on their body anywhere from their thigh to their chest unless it's a medical necessity. And if it is, once again, you need to have another adult present. I want to mention to you a couple of other things to keep in mind when you have contact with children. Now, some of these may seem very self-explanatory, but they're important. Never embarrass or shame a child about his or her body. Don't draw attention to a child while he or she is changing or showering. Tickling, wrestling, or otherwise touching a child in a way that is overstimulating or invasive to his or her privacy is simply not okay. Sharing personal information about your private romantic life is also not acceptable. Never sit on a child's lap. And if you're on an overnight, never share the same bed or sleeping bag with a child. Telling stories or engaging in conversation that is lurid or overstimulating is also unacceptable. What this all comes down to is that as counselors, you are caretakers of children. And part of what that means is that there's a power difference between you and the children that you work with. Part of that power difference is that at camp, you have more authority, more experience, more knowledge, and a different set of rules than the campers you work with. The other thing that you need to know is that inappropriate sexual or physical contact with a camper can have severe emotional and psychological effects on that camper that can last a lifetime. these reactions can be so severe that they can require intensive professional intervention, which can be disruptive to the victim's life as well as time-consuming and expensive. So I want to go over some other guidelines that will help keep you and the children you're working with safe. First of all, there is no hazing of children by other children or by adults. Children cannot be subjected to initiation rites that are abusive in any way. There should be double coverage of children by adults during changing times and shower times. Younger children should be encouraged to change their own clothes as much as possible. Most programs do not allow adults to give children back rubs. If it's acceptable in your program, it must be under certain conditions, meaning with clothes on and with other adults present. Tickling or teasing a child to the point where that child is out of control is just unacceptable. Pillow fights, wrestling matches, and other kinds of wrestling or tickling can become overstimulating in short order and need to be limited and carefully supervised. On sleepovers, there needs to be a minimum of 2 adult leaders, and at least one of those adults needs to be the same gender as the children on the trip. What this all boils down to is that whatever you do with campers needs to be done in broad daylight and with company. Now, you know, talking about this aspect of working with campers is not pleasant, but it's important if we're going to keep things safe. On the other hand, I don't want it to get in the way of you having fun with kids or allowing yourself to truly be present with campers. So there are just a couple of other things I want to make as points. First of all, look for signs of stress in yourself or in other counselors as a way of maintaining a safe environment at camp. Help other staff if you think they're struggling. Don't be afraid to alert the camp director if you think there's a problem, and seek help yourself if you feel overwhelmed or in danger of doing something you don't really want to do. You know, whether you're a volunteer or a paid staff member, being a camp counselor can be an extremely rewarding experience. You have the opportunity to make a really wonderful impact on a child who's maybe at camp for the first time. I want it to be fun, I want it to be happy, I want you to have a great time. Good luck.